Welcome back to Candid Conversations on Leadership. Chris, how are you doing?
Good, Candice. How are you? I'm in much better voice this week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Today we have Josh Henry. Josh Henry is the Assistant Director of Research Collaborative Services in the Office of the CIO at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He's worked at the University of Illinois since 1999 until recently entirely for the Administration for College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences, which we more affectionately know as ACES, holding a variety of positions and roles, including network analyst, team leader and manager, associate director of IT, and interim director of IT. Josh began working closely with the Office of Research and Agricultural Experimentation in 2004 in a variety of technical, administrative, and professional development roles. And for the past 6 years, he co-led the Research Academy, a semester-long professional development program for early career faculty, serving the College of ACES, as well as the Colleges of Veterinary Medicine, Applied Health Sciences, and the School of Social Work. As of a couple months ago, in February 16th of 2025, he recently took a newly created position as the Assistant Director of Research Collaborative Services with the goal of extending collaborative resource support through the Office of the CIO to support the larger campus research ecosystem. Welcome, Josh.
Yeah,
Thanks,
welcome,
Candice.
Josh. We are so glad to have you on the podcast. We both have known you for a really long time. We've worked together, but I don't think I know a lot of your background story. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
So today, we're really going to have you tell us about your journey and what you've learned about leadership along the way. And you'll, of course, highlight some of those career milestones. Perhaps it'd be best if we start off with your sharing a bit about your early career and then what inspired you to get into pursuing that leadership role in campus research IT.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, firstly, thanks for letting me be here. Thanks for inviting me. I've listened to some of the other episodes, and wow, it's great that you're doing this so that we can find inspiration in one another, which I think is, a really powerful thing and a kind of a fun thing too, to colleagues that we've seen in another light before and have a chance to hear their stories and be inspired ourselves by that. So, but to your question about sort of what's my story, how did I get here? I have joked with some of my other colleagues that I sort of feel like I grew up at the University of Illinois. I didn't go here for undergrad, but my partner and I found our way here very early in our marriage, and we're delighted to be involved with the university. And I remember like the first week when I worked at the university, I just walked around looking at the buildings. I remember telling her, I said, I feel like we live in Washington, D.C. With all the architecture, the large buildings, the spaces that were intended to inspire you. And I never got over it. I love this place. And it wasn't just sort of the spaces that intrigued me. It was the people that I began to meet who were so kind and so interested in investing in me, even though I sort of came from a different background, a different sort of place in the country. I'm still Illinois, but for me, I kind of lived in the middle of a cornfield for most of my growing up. And then to come to a place like this where learning and collaboration and sharing of information with people from all over the world, I was in love.
Share a little bit more about that early career, like what you first did, and then why did you move towards that campus research IT? What drew you to that?
Yeah, so I had some, like I said, when I got here, I had some folks who were being really kind to me. One of our early directors down in the basement of Mumford Hall, a fellow by the name of Paul Hixson, who later went on to be a CIO of the University of Illinois. He shared with me how when he was early in his career, someone else had encouraged him to continue learning, to go back to school, to take the things that he was passionate about. In his case, it was fine arts, photography, those sorts of things, but then to use those in whatever way he could to support the mission of the university and of the college. And I was inspired by that, because if anyone, and some of the folks who listen to this may have met Paul Hixson. Paul Hixson is a great guy, and I still consider him a mentor sort of and a friend. But he took that sort of peripheral interest and ways of telling stories, connecting people, and then used that in the support of the college in a very sort of people-centric way that really it spoke to me, right? And so I would say getting to know Paul helped me to sort of see that there's a bigger picture to the work that I was doing here at the university. And so Paul was one of them. Another was very early in my career. I was at that time doing direct end user support, helping people fix their printers, get email, have the email work on their computer and that sort of thing. And as I was doing it, this professor was having a conversation with a colleague in the room, just sort of like letting me kind of work in the background. And she was talking about her research to use blueberries to fight cancer, and that they had found great antioxidant properties, and that they were, things were going well. And I remember walking out of just that simple fixing somebody's email moment and thinking, I'm part of that. I'm helping with that. And I think from there, sort of like folks who were interested to sort of invest themselves into me, and then also seeing that we're working together for a bigger picture, really helped me want to continue to do that. And I think, sort of drawing a line, connecting the dots, if you will, I continued to work with the Office of Research. I continued to be curious about the people that I was meeting and the work that they were doing, partially selfishly, because I wanted to see what I was involved with. I wanted to see what I was helping with. Because, I think in IT, our role we have often is as enablers to help other people do the great work that they do. And so I just feel so curious and so interested about the work that our researchers do, because I feel like I'm part of it.
Yeah, you can see that impact.
Yeah. So drawing that line between the work that you were doing, just helping somebody with their email, and potentially like helping to cure cancer, right? That there's a real impact in that. But I think a lot of folks in our community tends to struggle, in our IT community tend to struggle with making that connection because we're so far removed. So like, how do you work with others to get them to see that? Because it seems like you saw it very naturally, but I think a lot don't. So how would you help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think having opportunities to be exposed to the bigger picture of the work. Folks who have reported to me over the years, I always would encourage them to make the most of professional development opportunities that let them see the bigger picture. One of the nice things about being here on our campus is there's lots of lectures, there's lots of guest speakers, many like open house days and that sort of thing. ACES would have an open house day, as would the College of Engineering. I know other colleges do that as well. To take a chance to be a part of that, to see, it gives you a little glimpse into what you're actually being a part of. I mean, it can be a tricky conversation, sure, but I think a lot of times folks, it really just mentioning it and giving them the opportunity to raise their gaze and think a little bit about it. I've found a lot of people embrace it.
Yeah. So are there other experiences that significantly influenced your leadership journey?
Yeah, I think so. I think so once I had a chance to sort of like understand that I was getting to be a part of something bigger and make a bigger impact, and that I liked that, there were some folks who gave me an opportunity to try something out, to lead, if you will. I think I probably came into the idea of leadership early on, maybe having some maybe more old-fashioned ideas about there's a boss and then there's the people that the boss tells to do something, and didn't understand as much the idea of finding the place where you can lead where you're at, and that sometimes even simple actions in being interested, in showing initiative, in sharing information, and calling other people to have a voice is a way of showing leadership that can be really useful. And so I want to say maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I was asked to be a part of a committee that I felt I was completely underprepared for. A committee to lead professors in the college to find out what sorts of resources they needed for high performance computing.
Mhm.
So I think the spot and the journey there is that someone took a chance on giving me an
Mm.
opportunity to try it out, and then being willing to take that somewhat scary step forward to say, okay, let's give this a shot. Even though I don't think I'm a leader, let's give this a shot and see how it goes.
I'm glad that you weren't scared, too scared to try.
Yeah, I was scared.
Not too scared to try, though.
Correct,
That's okay. What would you describe as your leadership philosophy or your style?
Yeah, what's my philosophy? I think something that's super important is being interested in the people that you're leading with, and having the opportunity to let them be who they are, and accept that, to figure out what the path forward together is as you're doing your work. So I guess my style is to try to create a space where we all can be do our best work. I like to think that happens, and then also have a safe space where if something's going wrong, we can address that. I guess my style is conversational, wanting to give people that same sort of trust that I was given, right? Because it was formative for me, the ability for me to have that trust. I think my style is to find places where we can give that trust away and share it so that they can have the impact of that as well.
So related to that, we've talked to a lot of our guests about kind of what their core values are as leaders. Those things that are like our rock that we go back to all the time. What would you describe as your core values?
I think genuinely respecting people is important to me. I think what that means, is sort of coming to each conversation, and I'm going to assume that in this conversation, you're bringing your best intentions. That as I may not know you, but I'm going to show you the respect that says, no, you're bringing a good faith version of yourself to this conversation. And hopefully that will help if we have a conflict, something comes up that maybe we don't see eye to eye. I can take the perspective that says, well, you're coming to this with good faith, and so I shouldn't feel attacked. We should just talk about it. So I think this idea of respecting people is a core value. I also think the idea that there's always enough credit to go around is really important. There's been a few occasions in my career and life where I didn't get credit for something where I felt like I should have. And I thought, I don't ever want that to happen to somebody else. And in fact, I think I probably could even err on the side of giving more credit away, and things will be okay. And so far I've found that's the case. Because even the greatest person that who's accomplished the greatest thing that you can think of, didn't get there by themselves. They've had a lot of people coming before them, helping them pave the way so that they could do the great thing that they did.
How did you respond in those cases where you felt like you didn't get credit? Because I think that's something that's really common in any work community.
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably didn't respond as well as I could have. I think that the happy part of that story, the end of that response, is that I don't want anyone else to have to deal with this. And I think probably it was early enough in my career that I hadn't possibly found the voice and the confidence to be confrontational in a way that's healthy. I think I sort of just let it go under the bridge and felt angry about it, and then got over it, and with the idea, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about your new role that you have over at the Office of the CIO.
Sure.
So it's a new role that was newly created, and you're probably doing lots of good things. But instead of focusing on those, what I would like to see is, can you tell me some of the challenges that you may see that you've experienced so far in the role?
Sure. So, I have been there. It's very new. So I will start by saying that, I think one of the challenges that I've seen up to this point is that communication is hard. The university is a big place, and there's a lot of us who care very deeply, who are working very hard, but we don't always share information in a way that helps one another. So that's a challenge. I would also say that, things going on in the world have been very challenging. It just so happens that the time I started is a very transitional time right now. And so I think it would be remiss to say that that's not having an effect. It certainly is. And I think that's important to bring to conversations that very often there are folks who are scared and are feeling hurt, and understandably so. And so I think it's wrong to ignore that as a part of the landscape of our conversation. I think we still have to find ways to continue our work, but also being aware that there's some support of one another that I think, we just have to bring to every interaction, because we don't know exactly where the other people may be in this scheme.
Have you found
Yeah.
have you found more empathy in the community as a result of these challenges? And just to give our viewers and listeners who might listen to this months after
Sure.
the recording, we're sitting in the middle of spring 2025, and federal research funding has a lot of uncertainty to it right now. So, have you found members of the community being more empathetic to each other in this time of crisis?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would say that, of the groups that I have most access to, early career professors and folks who interact with the Office of the CIO, there's definitely an empathy that's coming out of that. And even for graduate students. I mean, as graduate students are trying to navigate their way through this, they may have challenges that I couldn't ever understand. And so there's definitely a very deep sense of trying to look out for one another, I think, as we continue to do the work as best we can.
So what are some of the things that you're working on right now that you'd like to kind of give a shout out to that you're proud of?
Sure. Like I said, still nascent, still developing some things, but I am very proud of and I can't take credit for this really. It was sort of built before I got there, but I'm noticing this community of research technology support folks. Sometimes you call them research IT, but I really like to choose words that are maybe a little bit more inclusive and a little bit bigger, because I've seen in this community just a real there's definitely empathy for the current times, but there's also a real willingness to try to find new ways to work together. And I love the fact that we're starting to include a much bigger group. Folks like librarians are coming to the table in this. We've got folks from other data related services that are coming together with infrastructure people to have conversations, every month where we can bring things to the forefront about, what does it look like for us to work together in a better way? What does it look like for us to find out, to talk about the skills that we need in order to facilitate good work in others? And how do you develop those skills? What are you doing to develop those skills? So I feel proud of that. And I feel that there's a lot of hope in that direction. And I think that group is something that myself and others in the research enablement sphere in the Office of the CIO will be working a lot to try to develop over the coming months.
So I want to follow up a little bit there, because I think there's something just occurred to me that this community, this research community we have on our campus is incredibly decentralized. There's virtually no hierarchy in it at all. That's a great opportunity for anybody to lead from anywhere. So have you seen really good examples of people sort of stepping into that fray, and maybe not from a position of management into that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's plenty of examples where you get maybe a mid or later career professional who is a high level of technical expertise, getting an opportunity to be introduced to a researcher, and then seeing sort of the light in both of their eyes take off, where they realize there's something we can do together. And this person who maybe has been working on things that others would see as a little bit more boring in the past, gets to do something new that, maybe influences a new product, or changes the way people think about childhood development, or, fill in the blank. That's one of the beautiful things about our campus, is that the breadth of research that's happening here, as we pay attention to it, when we get to help out, to me, it makes that writing that bit of code or giving that training session on how to use a programming language all that much more meaningful.
So really, you can dream the possibilities, but I would like to hear more from you about what's the future of campus research IT, and then how do you plan to really achieve that?
Yeah, I think the future, while a little uncertain, I think what it looks like is formalizing the ways that we choose to work together. I think working together in a new way is something that's very important, strategically important for us as a campus. And I think that that's probably going to come along the lines of, keeping open lines of conversation, but also sort of involving one another in the way that we choose to make decisions. So that looks like having our governance structures be more integrated, having them, take the voices from the disparate places and bringing them together in a way that allows collective decision making for a real collaborative experience. I think as we look to the future, we've got a ways to go, but I think that's what it looks like. We'll see.
So let's switch up a little bit,
Yeah.
and talk about your personal habits and routines that contribute to your success. Are there things that you do every day? Are there kind of tips and tricks that you have that you can share with our viewers?
Tips and tricks. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I drink coffee every day. I do love me some coffee. Actually, my partner and I, my wife Stephanie, start every day with coffee together. That's actually really nice. That's really important for us and for me, to have that most important relationship where we can talk about what's going on in our life and feel the support. So that's an important habit that I have. I consume a ridiculous amount of books. I love books, both professional development books and fiction books.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah. So I like science fiction, almost exclusively. Occasionally, now and then, someone will throw me a title that I didn't expect, and I'll get that. But I also consume a lot of sort of professional development books too, just because it helps me to feel inspired. It helps me to have something to talk about with my colleagues that might inspire us both. It also gives me an opportunity and an in, I think, to hear about what you're reading, which I know it's not in the podcast, but I would love to hear about what the two of you are reading. So
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? Sure. I actually just finished, because I discovered that my new position has a book club. And I just finished a book called Crucial Conversations.
Oh, yeah.
It's a highly recommended book.
Chris, are you reading anything interesting?
Yeah, I'm actually reading the new Dan Heath book, Reset. We're actually, speaking of book clubs, my team is doing that one as a book club. And that one has been really, like, all the Dan Heath books and Dan and Chip Heath books are amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
And Reset is no different. It's a really good way of like looking at when you're stuck in a place. Organizationally, what do you need to look at to get yourself unstuck? And it's been a really great. We have our third meeting next week, I think. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
So let's talk about feedback. Tell me about feedback that you received that was tough to hear, but ultimately it made you better.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and can put you on the spot here a little bit, Chris, because it's actually feedback that came from you.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I had interviewed for a position that I didn't get, but you happened to be on the search committee. And so after that was all completed, everything was done and hired, you had a conversation with me, and you gave me some feedback that was difficult for me to hear, but it ended up being very helpful to me. So the feedback was, you came off too polished, like you knew all of the answers, and that there wasn't sort of a realness to the way that you presented yourself in that interview. And so it was, to be fair, it was a Zoom interview. And so I totally had notes plastered all around my screen so that I would know everything, that I could move from topic to topic, and I could speak with my best self and my best voice. And I felt like that's what I had done. And it turns out that is what I had done. And then it totally sent the wrong message. And so that feedback helped me to take a look and say, hey, it's not about like putting out polish and perfection out there all the time. It's much more valuable to bring yourself to the conversation and be real, warts and all. So that was very, very good feedback that it took me a while to sit with and then become comfortable with. But then once I did, I found it to be very helpful. So
I'm glad you found that useful.
yeah.
So the podcast is called Candid Conversations.
Yeah.
And as a part of that, we ask this question. What do most people not know about you?
Oh gosh, what do most people not know about me? So I am actually a trained National Weather Service storm spotter.
Oh, tell me more about what that was.
So whenever bad weather happens here in Central Illinois, that happens quite a bit, especially in the springtime, the National Weather Service will put out bulletins that will say what the spotter activation level is. And if it gets to a certain level of expected bad weather, then they'll activate the spotter network, which means that myself and other volunteers will go and place ourselves in predetermined positions, and we'll watch the weather.
So you look for tornadoes.
We look for tornadoes, high winds, other things that could be damaging, or hail. It could be detrimental to the community, and then we report that back.
So do you find it exhilarating or just interesting?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both.
Yes. I love going chasing storms. I don't do it as any official status, but it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. So I don't actually chase them, to be fair. I am stationary.
Okay.
But I mean, I think part of it too is this is like getting the chance to learn something new.
Yeah.
And so, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, it's a fun little side thing.
The facial expressions that it make. So actually, we're going to wrap up. Finally, what do you hope our listeners and our viewers take away from this conversation?
Well, I hope there's something helpful. I guess my thought would be to consider the fact whether or not you're in a position where you are right now to be that person that's showing the kindness that's going to make a difference for somebody else. So I think about my early career and those folks who took that time and let me sort of see what they were up to and encouraged me. So I guess the takeaway would be, maybe you're earlier in your career, that's fine. Pay attention to the folks who are showing you that kindness. Maybe you're later in your career, pay attention to the folks who need that to see that kindness, I think.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's been a really interesting conversation. Glad we finally got to sit down with you. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.